Hello and warm welcome to Media Week. Ahead on the program, Prime Media's John Hartigan lashes out at the government for its refusal to budge on media reforms. Plus, Apple adds to its market dominance with Apple Music and its Beats One radio station. Our co-host James Manning, editor and publisher of Media Week, is here for all that and more throughout the half hour. But first, MTV has undergone a major rebrand as it re-establishes itself for the new media age. It's changed its tagline from I want my MTV to I am my MTV, opening itself up to audience-created videos and bringing user-generated content to air through social media networks like Vine and Instagram. Looking after MTV in Australia and New Zealand, among other channels. And joining us now in the studio is Ben Richardson, GM and Senior Vice President at Viacom Networks. Ben, great to have your company on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
So you had a big MTV rebrand launch just last week. We'll talk about that in a moment. Before we get to that, what is actually in your suite of channels?
Well, my remit across both is the Nickelodeon brands, Nick and Nick Jr., MTV, General Entertainment, plus two music brands, Music and Dance. In New Zealand, we also have Comedy Central. So they're the media brands. On top of that, there's a licensing business, recreation business, events business, etc.
A couple of things to keep you busy there.
Yeah, everything but theatrical.
Yeah, I guess you've seen quite a transformation in how you engage with your audience over the years you've been with the company. A lot of your traditional video content's on the Foxtel platform.
Yeah.
But do you also spread outside that, don't you? So where else can people see your stuff?
Well, the fastest growing part of the network has been digital, and particularly for MTV and for youth and kids audiences. And if you look at sort of the most recent multi-screen reports, you're seeing amongst the preschool set, the tablet is, 50% of their viewing is on tablet. Teens and tweens, sort of 20% is mobile first. And so we've been disrupted, and I think the thing about MTV, it's been disrupted many, many times. And as much as sort of older media forms are now sort of reading the tea leaves and sort of saying there's a lot of change underway, we've seen that change, and it's not like we've had to change because we listen to our audience.
So is that part of the rebrand? I mean, obviously that's why you've changed this MTV rebrand. Can you tell us a bit about it? Because the slogan's obviously changed, but there's a lot more happening as well. Yeah,
well, basically, originally MTV spent a lot of energy in the creativity in between the music or the shows. And this is sort of, now we have the technology that enables us to turn our TV screen into much more of a digital and interactive screen. Our audience, we know that creativity is a really key driver of engagement. Yep. So we now have the ability to hand over the creativity of the channel to the audience rather than sort of having a one-way conversation. It's actually, it's a much broader conversation. That's the business of youth, is you have to be part of the conversation. You can sort of lead it, but you also have to have permission. And I think we're giving our audience permission to create and shape our brand. And I think it's really exciting. And like I said, the technology has enabled us to do this. But, pretty much from day 3, we started to see a lot of user-generated content appearing. It's pretty weird, but I think that's fine. We empower it, and we obviously we monitor it, but we're open to it.
But it's, as you say, it's a hard-to-reach sort of audience, isn't it? So is engagement with them absolutely imperative to success?
Yeah. Being part of the conversation is absolutely imperative, and what we've seen on the MTV's digital side, which has grown significantly in the last 12 months, was what we did was we changed the conversation. Previously it was, a site would promote the channel, whereas now the site does many, many things, but being part of that conversation is imperative. So we're talking a lot more about anything rather than tonight.
Yeah.
Rather than tune-in messages, it's anything.
They sort of drive the content in a way.
And you start to see, real spikes on things like the most recent example was a story on the Japanese craze of shaving your dog into a cube. And we started talking about that. And that was the biggest story we've posted this year, pretty much. But that's what people want to share. That's the conversation they wanted to have. And in the past, you sort of tried to drive it, but now we'll join and we'll share.
I'm guessing because of those digital platforms, you're probably reaching a bigger audience than you ever were.
Yeah.
But you mentioned the multi-screen report. That sort of shows off how crucial the big screen is to a lot of viewers. So is that still an important part of your business?
Of course, yeah. It's multiple streams of content on multiple screens. And still, I think the lounge room still plays a really important role. What I think about looking at teen behaviour, and what I'm not sure about is, I think when you're a teen, you want a bit of privacy, especially, some of the MTV content. It's not necessarily something you want to watch with your parents. So I feel that they're going to devices because they want to have their own viewing experience, but when they watch, they're watching in different ways, but they're on multiple screens. In most households, there's 7 screens or something like that. So once again, it's us just keeping up with the audience and being relevant.
Should we talk a bit about Nickelodeon as well? Because this one has a number of sub-brands.
Yeah.
Can you just rank the importance of it in terms of the broader market, in terms of Nickelodeon?
Well, if you read Mediaweek on a daily basis, you'll see the really big change in the last, pretty much since November and Foxtel re-tiered, was the growth of preschool and Nick Jr.
Yep.
So Nick Jr. for us is preschool, strong educational basis, and what it's shown is that, you know, our appeal to grocery buyers, not just for preschools, but grocery buyers of all kids, is really, really strong. And, you know, I'm collegiate. We work really closely with Disney in some ways because as a platform, the preschool category is really important, I think, to Foxtel. Often kids get lost in the conversation after music, drama, sport. Yeah. But if you look at the ratings on a daily basis, 7 to 10 of the top 20 shows, all people, are preschool shows. So it's hugely important for us in a different way. You know, it's about building trust, and it's a conversation with parents as much as it is entertaining preschoolers.
You must have access to good stats about use of different devices, mobile devices. What's the trend with long and short form content? Are they still more short form and the traditional TV's long form? Or are we seeing that spread now? People will sit down for longer with another screen?
They will. They will sit down for longer. On the sort of teen and tween side, you know, NMTV, you do see watching long clips on mobile. Tablet is the currency for preschoolers.
And they watch shows as well too. They watch a 30-minute show maybe.
And that's where, you know, you can, you know, as much as live's important, we try and, you know, I try and restrain myself from looking at overnights. I look at consolidated numbers, and I think that with preschool in particular, Foxtel Go is a really key destination as well.
There's a question, I guess, between sort of charging and free content. So how much is free? I mean, there's obviously some free and some paid for. What's the preference there? I mean, is it about striking a bit of a balance?
Yeah, I mean, the short form is always free for us. I think we're experimenting with different app models and authentication models, where as a subscriber you unlock new content streams. Viacom Media Networks, we distribute content beyond our paid business as well. We have lots and lots of brands which aren't always present here, and you know, we had a great win this week. Lip Sync Battle, which is Spike's sort of marquee title, was over 1 million people on Monday night. You know, and it's a great format, and I can't remember the last time a sort of a US format or a version of format did that well. So we have relationships with free as well.
Yep.
Often we'll put our library up on, we'll put selective shows up online. We'll use online to tease. So it's just multiple strategies. And it really depends on the content and the stream and the brand. It's complex.
Yeah. We talk a lot on the show about multiple income streams for media companies. We've also been talking a lot recently about MCN. You moved to them, I think, virtually exactly 12 months ago. How big a part of the pie is that income for you in this market, and what's the experience been like with MCN?
It's been great, and it's a really important stream. I think it's important, what we call the spots and dots, you know, just selling audience, but also the partnerships you build, and a lot of the commercial partnerships are a little bit more subtle. I think we've had great success with our events, and what we're excited by is just working on building that integrated model. The key win, I think, from MCN for us has been what programmatic is doing for us is that the data set that they use through Multiview, it means that suddenly, where a traditional advertiser hasn't really looked at some of our demographics, they're suddenly seeing our brands show up. In terms of preschool in particular has been a winner, where suddenly you're talking to auto and to categories which have nothing to do with preschoolers, because suddenly the marketers are seeing and the agencies are seeing our brands come up in that data set. And, you know, with preschool, like I said, grocery buyers it's a really, really large grocery buyer audience. So that's really changed the dynamic for us as well. And so we're just talking to different sorts of people. You know, MCN, also we're really, you know, we're excited about what will happen with them and 10. I think that also opens up things a little bit more, particularly in the kids space. You know, you're talking to a much bigger platform, and are there opportunities across both? And we're excited to see how that develops, I would say. So it's been good.
Can I ask about streaming video, because this is something we've been talking about a lot as well on Mediaweek, particularly recently. Do you think more of your content will sit there in the future, and do you feel, you know, all the current players can actually survive this market?
Yeah, I don't know if... it's hard for me to comment on who will survive, and I think there's a lot of talk about the death of different services, whether it's streaming or free-to-air, whereas what we see is I think they are complementary. I think people, just from my own experience, are taking up a few of the different ones. I think as long as you can as long as you can acquire the right series, I think you're going to stay relevant. My predictions are always wrong, so I'm not going to say anything. But it's really is.
But at the moment, there's nothing. You think there's probably room for all the different platforms at the moment.
I know that's contrary to popular opinion, but I think right now in this environment, and things will change, but consumers are experimenting, and you can experiment.
Well, still too early. There's a lot to play out, isn't there, I think, before we can make too many judgments. Yeah.
They all have strong partners. That's the thing, is it's not like there's, other than perhaps a quick flicks, I think the others have strong partners who aren't in the business of failing, and they have very deep pockets and very rich content streams.
Yep, time will tell. Ben Richardson, thank you so much for joining us with those insights today.
Thank you.
GM there and Senior Vice President at Viacom Networks. We are going to move on now and take a bit of a stock watch, because it is the first show for the new financial year. So let's get a check on how the media space has been tracking. We're joined by Evan Lucas from IG. Evan, I mean, just looking at, I guess, the last financial year for the media space, how would you sum it up? Because it hasn't been a good one on the stock market.
No, that's a polite way of saying it's been a horrible year in terms of the financial year. This is the worst year in the last 7 in terms of where we've been at. The worst year we saw was 2009 when we fell 31.2%. This financial year, FY15, the index has fallen 21.6%. Now that compares with an average yearly gain of around about 12.1, and the best year that we saw was FY13 when it actually ran up 37.5. So it is not a good year, unfortunately, and it's really interesting to see where that's actually come from. Worst performer, unfortunately, was STW Communications. We know about their headwinds they've had over the last financial year. They were down 54% from the July 1 start last year. But it's interesting, the next 3, and I think that is a key thing to what we've been talking about on this program. 2 to 4 is occupied by the free-to-air networks, and 7 is actually the worst one, which is surprising, down 43.8%, 10 down 28.3, 9 down 28.2, all very close. Clearly gets back into that idea that investors are incredibly spooked by the structural headwinds coming into free-to-air networks and free-to-air TV. I think that clearly needs to be there. The one that wrapped up the top 5 worst performers was actually Sky Networks, down 15.5%. On the other side of the ledger, let's have a look at the better performers. It's actually not still what you would call anything to write home about. The best performer over the year was News Corp, down 1.6% over the year. It was the best performer again. It hasn't really moved in any shape or form. The next is APN, down around about 8%. REA down 8.2%. Southern Cross down 9.4%. I found that quite interesting considering the headwinds they've had around their programming, around the issues around the reach rule. That's actually not a bad year considering the bad and negative news. And the last one was Fairfax, down just shy of 10%, and that was the top 5 performers in that space. So not a good year for the media space, unfortunately. Let's hope that 2016 is actually going to be a much clearer and a much better structural year. But what an interesting year it's been. Really disappointing earning streams and classic structural headwind changes in the media space.
Yeah, no one up for the year. So just quickly on the next year to come, what are sort of the main themes that might play out in the media space? Is it the same as what we saw last year?
It is. I mean, the thing that's changed this financial year, and clearly I think that we may be not positioned for it already, is the fact that the reach rule now looks like not only being put on the back burner, but actually may not even get through. That clearly will be an interesting one to watch, and unfortunately that might be a negative sort of burn. In terms of what's also going inside print media is clearly showing that it is slightly turning a corner. They are getting their cash costs down, so maybe you see some okay net profit numbers, but again, revenue is still a real concern. And then the question that was being asked at the end of last financial year that's flowed through into this financial year is free-to-air. Where is it going? How is it generating its ad revenue? And will it be the standout performers that have been in the media space? Clearly, last year it wasn't. Will it be this year? Again, jury's still out. We need to see the kind of viewership numbers of flagship programs that come out in summer.
All right, Evan, thank you so much for those insights.
Thanks, guys.
Evan Lucas there from IG. We do need to take a quick break on Mediaweek. Coming up next, as we were just talking about, we'll hear about the new campaign Regional TV has launched to fight the government's stance on media reforms. Plus, is the Hockey v Fairfax case closed? We'll have details next.